going to week one, Positive Christianity, and we have people watching this morning. Good morning to them online. And this airs just the sermon. Our Facebook page, Radiant, airs the entire service. So that's what we do with that. So, and if you smell meats going on and everything, that's because we have a cookout afterwards. We want you to be a part of it. There's a lot of food. We're basically using stuff left over from picnic, the rock leftover stuff, because we like to go there with a full spread of everything the same. And so we have Oscar Mayer hot dogs, we have Nemeth hot dogs, and we have a few pizza burgers. So, so that's what we're having afterwards, and there's a buffet back there as well. All right, huh? And the pies, yes, because Jackie won the pie baking contest, and it was an easy win for her, and got the gift card to the Rosa Theater. She was the only one that entered, so there were a lot of good desserts, though. All right, so positive Christianity. Let's dive in on this talk here, because I think this is an important thing for us to reflect on. This is going to be a 3-week series as we explore the church looking back to the events of World War II and coming forward from there. It was said that God died in the 19th century. That was like all the big wars and things going on. And man died in the 20th century. For when God is dead, man becomes an untamed beast. There was a Christian author quite a few years ago, and he was really prominent in the 70s. He had basically a goatee that didn't have the mustache part, goatee. It was like Jeremy's old goatee that was longer, and his name was Francis Schaeffer. Now, if you don't know who Francis Schaeffer is, there are a lot of good authors out there right now that you could read, and they're one-off authors or books, and it's a good book. It's a challenging read. But then there's like the pillars of the Christian faith, okay, like A.W. Tozer that we're doing a study on, Francis Schaeffer. Francis Schaeffer said this in the 70s. He told us that one day we would wake up and discover that the America we once knew was gone. And I think that's important for us to talk about, because as we reflect back on the events of World War II and the church today, we can learn a lot. There's the old saying that those that don't look back are doomed to repeat their past. Okay, they're going to repeat their history if they don't look back and learn from it. Now, one of the prominent figures, obviously, of World War II was Hitler. Hitler did not discourage people from attending church. Okay, this is a little bit of a history lesson here. Now, I realize for some of us history buffs and those watching online may say, just a minute. Okay, follow me on this, because we're going to lay down a little bit, then I'm going to talk a little bit. Hitler was baptized Catholic, okay, Adolf, okay, but as we all know, he long abandoned his faith. He did not mind people attending as long as it did not affect the way they lived or the values they held, okay, the Reich, the Nazis. And as long as what was being taught was in line with the good for the German people, he didn't have a problem with it. The problem is what was being taught and the way the church was acting was less than stellar. In fact, there's a scripture in Revelations chapter 3, 15 through 17 says, I know your deeds, that you are neither cold nor hot. I wish you were either one or the other. So because you are lukewarm, neither hot or cold, I am about to spit you out of my mouth. You say I am rich, I have acquired wealth and do not need a thing, but you don't realize that you are wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. Now, one of the things growing up in the church and just in life in the United States, kids, their minds wander. The scientists would say that critical thinking skills actually doesn't kick in until you're about 21 or so, okay? But at the same time, kids think. They start asking questions. If this Holocaust was going on, why was America not doing anything about it? What was going on back here? What was the whole situation back here? You know, every generation of Christians has somebody, an author, or a group of people saying, this is it. This is the generation that will not die. This is the generation Christ is going to redeem. And we look at this situation, we think, wow, what were they thinking back then? I mean, times are tough now, but as a whole, okay, there's political party against political party and stuff like that, and you know, things that are less than stellar. Neither side's looking really good right now. But back then, during World War II, wow, the thought process of thinking this is it this is the end times because of such a travesty. But then you start asking questions, and the people that lived during those times start saying things like, well, honestly, they didn't know a whole lot of what was going on over here in the States, or they shoved it aside. They didn't want to tackle anything. And this was the case with the church in Germany, and a lot of churches when it came to this atrocity that was happening in World War II. Now, here's the deal. Hitler knew he would encounter some opposition. But he ridiculed Protestant pastors as cowering dogs bidding for the sake of their salaries. Those were his exact words. Churches, he said, must be forbidden from interfering with temporal matters. Hitler had to reinterpret. In fact, he didn't like church so much and what was being taught. He had to reinterpret Christmas and Easter for the people there. For the SS troops, the date was changed to December 21st, which is what other celebration? Winter solstice. Thank you, science person. It was the winter solstice. And I ran into a lot of science people last night. Tracy said, I'm taking you on a date. Okay, we're going on a date. It's 10 o'clock at night date, okay? And so, it's like, wow, okay, what are we doing here? And we go out to Hartman's Creek. And there was a box that came in the mail from Amazon. It was the gravity chairs that you see at campsites where you kick back and you lounge and you think you're going to flip back. And we sat there. It was the meteor shower last night. So there we are in a big field full of other people that we couldn't see. And we're watching the meteor shower. Science people know this stuff. So, but school prayers were banned, and carols and nativity plays were forbidden by the Nazis. In 1938, Christmas was changed to Yuletide. That's where we got the word. Christmas was changed over to that. And then further on, as we begin reading more and more, there was Article 24, which comes with our series message, with our series title. It said, liberty for all religious denominations in the state so far as they are not a danger to the moral feelings of the German race. It was Hitler's idea to start Article 24 called Positive Christianity. In other words, you do what I say, or things are going to become very, very rough for you. And passive Christianity was just basically saying, okay, don't want to get in trouble. And there were a couple people during those times that rose up and said, nah, it's not okay. It was as if they just became the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that said, I will not bow to that. I cannot bow to that. But there are so many other Christians that were there during those days, and pastors and priests and churches in general, that said, yep, we're in, that's fine. And they were passive about what was going on. It was positive Christianity. It was a movement within the Nazi Germany which mixed ideas of radical purity and racial purity and Nazi ideology with elements of Christianity. Hitler used the term in Article 24 of this 1920s paper. Churches liked his usage of the words freedom and tolerance. And this became a very big deal. This was the decline of the church in that area during that time. What was best defined by him, not churches or the Bible, is what went over during those times. Christians thought that if they left Hitler alone, he would leave them alone, and so we don't want to touch that. Do you know of anything like that today? If I just don't touch this topic, they won't touch us, and we're going to be okay. But Jesus here, it gives John the words to say that because you're neither hot nor cold to this church in Laodicea, they say, because you're neither hot nor cold, I'm going to spit you out of your mouth. In other words, what God's saying in this scripture is that, hey, you know what? You need to draw a line. Because there's the old saying that goes, if you don't stand for something, you're going to fall for everything. So where do you stand? Where do you stand on something? I'm not talking like, okay, that was a cool meme, and it seems right. That's good. That's nice. It's like the whole, I just think of the Tommy Boy thing. Seemed like a good idea, that sort of thing. No, that's not the way it goes. We have to literally come to a point where we say, this is what Scripture says, this is what I believe, and this is what I'm going with. I had somebody message a church this week and I get these periodically, And they said, where do you stand on this? We're looking for a church and we want them to have this stance. Where do you stand on this? I replied back, where exactly we stand on it. I did not hear back from them. Why? Because Scripture makes it clear. We have to be either hot or cold. Lukewarm. I used to tell my teens, I'd have 85 kids in my youth group in Milwaukee. And I'd get to the point sometimes where I'm like, some of you guys, only 9 of the kids were from our church. The rest were from the city. And it got to the point where it's like they would come, screw around, which I expected from the new kids. But actually it came more from the church kids. It's funny how that works. The kids that come in from out of the church, are the ones that are more well-behaved and all that stuff. And then the ones in the church, they're just used to it, so they give you a hard time. I was part of that, so growing up. But I would say to them, if we're not going to take this thing seriously, why would you even come? Why would you even want to waste your time being here when there's so many other good things to do? There's so many other things to do. Hot or cold, okay? On again, off again, lukewarm. My Christianity, my Jesus isn't a daily decision. It's a lifestyle change. And that's something that we need to have. And that's what these people didn't have. They saw the opposition coming, so they said, okay, we are just going to go ahead and bow. Unlike Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who said, you know what? I can't bow to this. I just can't. And they didn't. And so what happened? They were put in the furnace. And they turned it up so hot that even the people putting them in died. And what Scripture makes clear is that they said, even if God doesn't intervene, I'm still not going to bow. Now, quite honestly, you or I start up a campfire and we burn our finger. I'm a guy, so I really wuss out, okay? and all that. And these guys were faced with a life-changing, a life-threatening decision. And what's interesting about Scripture is when you read that story, the whole even if, that's a huge part. And then there's the whole part of when the jailer, the person running the furnace, saw there were 4 people there in the furnace. Scripture doesn't say that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego saw him, but the jailer saw him. It was at that moment that his eyes were opened up like, what are we doing? And I think that came to a point here with this positive Christianity. The church, they bought into a lie. Before Hitler moved to destroy the church, he decided to make peace with it and use it for his own ends. That's just who he was. But he found there was not enough room for the cross and the swastika, and so he turned up the heat on the Christians of that time. Now we look at that question. I look at that whole thing, and I ask the question, what would I have done? Would I have been at Corrie ten Boom? Would I have been somebody who tried to and maintain my faith? Or would I have been somebody that said, nope, pressure is way too high right now, I'm just going to go with it? God will forgive me. Isn't that how we work sometimes? That's one of the slogans that I've thrown out there. It's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. So if I go ahead and do this, then I can ask for forgiveness, and that's not okay. And Corrie ten Boom, she took a stance on this sort of thing. There were 2 other people that rose up during those days as well. Clearly, though, the majority of the clergy had adopted an attitude of safety first. They are not going to face Hitler. They're in for this God thing. They're doing this until the pressure's on, and then I'm backing off. I don't need this heat on me right now. Because for a lot of pastors, if the government came in and said, your church is done, well then, there goes a lifestyle, there goes, everything. And that's what these people were facing. More than 2,000 pastors who had stood withdrew their support when the pressures arose, according to statistics. Even more among the congregants. Eyewitness accounts of how some members of the church reacted to Nazism of their times. And again, I would ask the question, what would I have done? When we're confronted with something hard, something that cuts against our doctrine, something that cuts against our convictions, what would we have done? What would I have done? One person said this, an eyewitness account. I lived in Germany during the Nazi Holocaust. I considered myself a Christian. We heard stories of what was happening to the Jews, but we tried to distance ourselves from it. Because what could happen, what could anyone do to stop it? A railroad track behind our small church ran behind our church, and each Sunday morning we could hear the whistle in the distance and then the wheels coming over the tracks. We became disturbed when we heard the cries coming from the train as it passed by. We realized that it was carrying Jews like cattle in the cars. Week after week, the whistle would blow. We dreaded to hear those sounds of those wheels because we knew that we would hear the cries of the Jews en route to a death camp. Their screams tormented us. We knew that by the time the train was coming, and when we heard the whistle blow, we began singing hymns. By the time the train came past our church, we were singing at the top of our voices. We heard the screams, we sang more loudly, and soon we heard them no more. Years have passed and no one talks about it anymore, but I still hear that train whistle in my sleep. God forgive me, forgive all of those who called ourselves Christians yet did nothing to intervene. Daily, as Christians, what does God call us? We're the light of the world, a city on a hill. He's called us to be salt to this world. And daily we're confronted with things, you and me, as a church and as individuals, where we hear that symbolic whistle blowing, and what do? It's at that moment God comes and says, what are you going to do about this? What are you going to do about this? When I go biking every day, and it started last year, one of my bike routes is past the Wapaka Hotel. And I would see people, and I would remember some faces, and it would, as if I heard that whistle blowing, and God would say, what are you going to do about this? Well, I could just jump on with one of the other things going on in town, and they don't really help this section, but they already have it going. I'll just jump on with that. And no. What do we do in situations where God's saying, I really need you to step up here? God's saying at the same time, I really need you to step up because remember that whole God, Jesus thing on the cross where I stepped up for your salvation? I need you to step up too. And so we hear this whistle blowing, and what do? Do we turn up Christian radio to the point where we don't hear the voice anymore and all is well? Or do we hear that whistle blowing and we say, I need to do something about this? One example is The Rock. We could have easily said, we'll let one of the other cool ministries in town go ahead and take care of that. Eventually they may get over there. I got too many things going on right now. I don't need another ministry to run. We could have said that. Our church doesn't need something else. Look at how many people we have, and all of the excuses could have came. But when we heard the whistle blowing, I know for me it wasn't okay just to start singing louder and drown that out. It was, we need to do something about it. We need a ministry where people don't have to sign up, where we don't have to do follow-up, where they can maintain their dignity because they don't need to sign up or follow up, and we can just help them and show them the love of Christ. But when we're faced with issues that challenge our scriptural basis, our scriptural foundation, what do? What do we do in those situations? 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 2 says, for he says, in the time of favor I heard you, and in the day of salvation I helped you. I tell you, now is the time of God's favor. Now is the day of salvation. In other words, now is the time to do it. It's interesting when you serve Christ, because the world we live in, that's the guy grilling, by the way. He's the man. The times we live in, the days will get darker. But when we're following Christ, it just gets brighter. Okay? Now, I don't like to stir up controversy on Facebook. I just don't. Did you see how fast they finished the project by the cemetery after that meme posted? I'm just saying. Okay. I was at Quick Trip 2 weeks ago, and the cashier, she goes, I loved your meme about the zombie attack. Okay, I'm like, well, thank you. And she goes, and they finished the project. You know, it was just hilarious. But, you know, it's one of those things like, it's just, I put it out there, and it's just, I say that jokingly. I don't like to be controversial. But, you know, there was a moment where it said, where I was like, for weeks, for months, I was like, Tracy, I got this meme. And she's like, don't do it. Don't do it. It's like your kid trying to do something. You're like, don't do it. And they're going to go for it. And they wipe out. Well, I didn't wipe out, okay? But I didn't post it either. But I was like, really, another alcohol store, another liquor store in town. This is the meme I'm going to make, babe. I said, I'm going to post a picture of the liquor store. I'm going to say, for pastors, this is job security, you know? And she's like, don't do it. Don't do it. But it's like one of those things that just, you know, we look at it and we got to do something. We have to stay faithful to what God's called us to do. You know, and I realized I didn't post it and stuff like that. I was like, that's just mean. That's not nice. But, you know, at the same time, what has God called us to do? When God calls us to do something, it ought not take a whole lot of thought, a whole lot of praying about it. If God's planted something in your heart, even like this girls ministry thing, some of us may have heard that and we're like, no, but you can't get it out of your head. That's how kids work, you know? Then the one little girl will come up and, I love you, and you're like, I'm in for the next month, next year, whatever. But maybe it's that point where you're like, I don't want to do it. But it keeps twirling over in your brain, and all of a sudden you're just like, okay, I'm going to do it. You know, there's a lot of things that God calls us to do in the church and especially outside of the church. And when we hear this sort of verse that says, I tell you, now is the time of God's favor, God's not going to let you down. He's just not going to. Quite honestly, for the first couple times you do something for God, it's weird, it's uncomfortable, it's odd. When we showed up at the hotel with the Rock a couple months ago, when we started up again somewhere around the great blizzard of April, we showed up and I knew two people, Nolan and TV John, both of them still there. And for months we kept going, and it was the same people over and over. This last time we went, it was full on our old crew again. People were coming down out of the hotel, and it was decent. Still not up as high as where we were, but we were probably at least double of where we were helping people. And it's comfortable, it's good, and God gives you favor to do it. You know, the thing that we can't do is become like the World War II church that said, I don't see a problem, and they just and walk away, turn up the Matt Mayer and the headphones, and off I go, praising the Lord to Hillsongs. Okay? No. We have to say, that's the problem, that's the issue that needs God's work in it. I'm going to hit it head on. This is what we're going to do. I love the story of Elijah and Elisha. Okay? For those of you that don't know the Elisha, it's alphabetical order. Elijah went first. Okay, he died. He didn't die. God just took him. And then Elisha. But I love the story because there was the whole whose God is bigger moment that they had in 1 Kings. And then Elijah in 1 Kings 18:41 says this to Ahab. Go eat and drink, for there is the sound of a heavy rain. The only issue with that little verse and that story is that it wasn't raining. Okay? It wasn't raining. But Elijah knew that God was up to something. Elijah knew that God was going to do something big. And you can equate that to your own personal storm. You can equate this to your own personal health struggles. You can equate this to your own personal things that you want to get past and push through. But Elijah turns to Ahab and says, you go eat and drink, because I hear the sound of a heavy rain. He knew something big was coming, and it was going to be good. Do you hear the sound of rain in your situation, in your story? Do you hear that rain coming? That God's going to do something cool, something big? Because as the worship team comes back up, I'm going to leave you with this question. What train in your life is rumbling past us today whose whistle we're ignoring? Day in, day out, you hear a train whistle blowing, and you're trying to ignore it. You're trying to let it go. Maybe it's issues with children. Maybe it's a job promotion. You want that promotion, you should go for it, and you're like, I'm not qualified. Man, you're God's kid. You're qualified to do it. I'm not going to get my hopes up. That's your problem. You don't get your hopes up. Okay? Elijah, he got his hopes up. He said, I hear rain coming. I can't imagine having $1,000 in my checking. And that's why you don't have it, because you can't imagine it. Okay? You got to imagine it. When Walt Disney passed away, there was the story that before he even stepped foot into Disney World, people were saying, man, can you just imagine what it's going to be like? He goes, I've been there already. I've been there already. It's basically the whole story of you got to have faith in your situation. And so when you hear that whistle blowing, it's so easy to take more hours of overtime. It's so easy to sign up the kid for another sport event so you're just busy. It's so easy to do this or that instead of paying attention to that whistle on that train rolling by. But when's the last time you said, okay, I am sick of hearing that. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to do it. There's going to be change coming. We can't be like the World War II church and just turn a deaf ear to something big like that. We have to be willing to say, I'm going to fight. And in some cases, due to the history of this message, it may be taking on government. You may be that voice that says, I don't like the bump outs that are coming to Main Street in Wapaka. And you're going to do something about it. I don't know, that's a loose analogy, but you know what? We have epidemic problems with drugs and all that. And it just takes one person to say, I'm going to do something about it. We're going to make a change. And if you need help, man, we're in. We're going to help you. And God's going to bless your steps.